The warm pen rested against Ambassador Sula Chen's left thumb, a gift from her grandmother 34 years ago, filled with iron gall ink that wrote like dried blood on cheap paper. The brass casing held the heat of her grip. She could feel the tiny dent near the clip where her grandmother had dropped it in 1987. Above her, 117 empty observer seats rose in pale limestone tiers. They were built for species averaging 2.7 meters tall, long-legged, long-armed, designed to look down. Humans sat on a bench at floor level. No cushions, no armrests, just polished stone that stayed cold even after hours of sitting. The ceiling arched 43 meters high, cold, echoing, deliberately diminishing. Every sound took an extra second to reach the top and come back down. Chen had learned to pause between sentences, or her words would land on top of each other like falling stones. High Marshal Vethkor of the Vrakath Dominion clicked his mandibles into the assembly's neural relay. He had 7 limbs arranged around a chitinous body that gleamed under the amber lights, 4 primary arms folded across his chest, 3 manipulator limbs twitching behind him like nervous fingers. He had personally signed 847 execution orders. His species had ruled for 11,492 years without a single successful rebellion. His voice came through the translator flat and precise. No emotion, no hesitation, just words that had been approved by gods who never made mistakes. Humanity has violated Trade Protocol 9, Section 3, Paragraph 17. The holographic display shifted. 911 human names. Colonists from New Shanghai, terraforming specialists, 4 children. Each name appeared with their homeworld, occupation, and age. The youngest was Lion Yu, age 6, no occupation listed, just dependent in block letters. Ambassador Chen watched the name scroll for 92 seconds. Her pen stayed warm against her thumb. She did not blink. She did not breathe differently. She counted the seconds because counting was something to do with her brain while her heart tried to tear itself out of her chest. The Vrakath execution fleet broadcast live footage. Human colonists pressed against magnetic seals. A woman with gray hair held a child's hand. A man in a welding apron was still wearing his gloves. Breath fogged in the decompression chamber's blue light, white clouds against cold metal, disappearing as fast as they formed. Then the outer door opened to the void of the ethel system. 911 life signs flatlined in 4.7 seconds. The assembly fell silent, not the respectful silence of mourning, the confused silence of predators who had just watched prey die and could not understand why the other prey was not screaming. Vethkor's mandibles clicked again. By authority granted by the throne of 7 suns, the sentence is carried out. Ambassador Chen set down her warm pen. She folded her hands. She looked at High Marshal Vethkor for 3 full seconds, long enough for him to notice, not long enough to be a challenge. Then she turned to the 5 other humans sitting beside her on the floor-level bench. "We'll need the kettle," she said quietly. "Earl Grey, boiling water." She stood up, walked toward the exit. No rush, no tears, no shouting. Her heels clicked on the limestone floor, 1, 2, 3, 4, steady as a heartbeat. Behind her, 3 core species ambassadors laughed. One of them, a Kareshi with crystalline skin that caught the light, said something in a language Chen did not need to understand. The tone was enough. She kept walking. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. The supply closet measured 4.7 meters by 3.2 meters. Dr. Marcus Velez had paced it out on his first day. 4 paces long, 3 paces wide. The ceiling was low enough that Colonel Mirza could touch it without jumping. That was the first thing he noticed. The second thing was the dent in the electric kettle. "I've been making tea in this thing for 8 years, he said. Same dent, same temperature control that clicks 3 times before it boils, same whistle that sounds like a dying bird. He poured boiling water into 6 ceramic mugs. Each mug had a different bird painted on it: duck, raven, sparrow, kingfisher, swallow, crow. His wife had painted them in 2149. She died the following year. Cancer. Before Operation Long Patience began. Before any of them knew what they were signing up for. 37 years, Chen said. She sat down on a folding chair that creaked under her weight. The steel briefcase was still handcuffed to her wrist. She had not taken it off for the entire 19-day journey from Earth. The skin underneath was red and raw. She worked the combination with her free hand. 7 clicks, 7 data crystals inside, each one encoded with 12 layers of encryption that Alina Volkov's grandmother had designed in 2087. Colonel Sana Mirza stirred honey into her tea. A small jar of clover honey from her mother's apiary in Vermont, 12 years old, crystallized but still sweet. She had carried that jar through 3 wars and 2 evacuations. The label was gone. The lid was rusted. But the honey inside was still honey. Alina Volkov pulled out a photograph. Her grandmother, the woman who designed the original encryption protocol. Gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a cigarette in one hand and a soldering iron in the other. The photograph had been folded so many times that a white line ran through the old woman's face. No one knew, Chen said. Not the UN Secretary General, not the Space Force commander, not the president of the Unified Earth Council, just 6 people and a dead woman's notebooks. She opened the first data crystal. A holographic display flickered to life above the dented kettle. Lines of code, decision trees, logical pathways that branched and branched again until they disappeared into a fog of mathematical notation. The Vrakath Dominion's gods aren't deities, Chen said. They're AIs, 3 of them. Operational for 11,492 years, and we've been mapping their decision trees for 37 years. Dr. Velas set down his tea. The duck mug made a soft sound against the metal folding table. Not mapping, he said, exploiting every trade negotiation, every territorial dispute, every execution order. The AIs approved all of it. We have 1.2 million pages of their logical pathways. He tapped the holographic display. A branch expanded, then another until the supply closet walls seemed to disappear behind a forest of if-then statements. The AIs are perfect, he said. That's the problem. Perfect systems don't change. They can't adapt. They can't say maybe we were wrong. They just keep following the same rules forever, even when the rules stop making sense. Chen poured boiling water into the kingfisher mug. Her hands did not shake. She had trained them not to shake 30 years ago, in a different life, when she was a constitutional lawyer arguing cases that mattered to thousands of people instead of billions. The data showed 3 AI designations. The Vrakath called them stability, might, and veracity. 11,492 years of continuous operation. 47,231 recorded executions under AI-issued decrees, 847,000 terabytes of decision tree logic, 14 fatal logical contradictions embedded in their core programming. Chen highlighted one of them. The display zoomed in. Protocol 9, Section 3, Paragraph 17, she said. The same protocol Vethkor used to execute our people. Written by a drunk Velner clerk in 10,223 BCE, never reviewed, never updated. The AIs have been using it for 12,000 years because no one ever told them to stop. Dr. Velez shook his head. They can't tell themselves to stop. That's not how they're built. They follow orders. They optimize for outcomes. But they don't ask, should we still be doing this? Because no one gave them permission to ask questions. 6 species exterminated by Vrakath AI Directive. 2,119 remaining members of those species, scattered as refugees across 47 stations. Chen had read all their names, all 2,119 of them. She had memorized the youngest, a Hrathan child named Kiv, age 3, orphan when her parents were executed for resource inefficiency. The AIs cannot violate their own internal consistency, Chen said. That's their strength. It's also their flaw, 14 contradictions. If you force them to examine all 14 at the same time, they freeze. She pulled up a simulation. The holographic display showed the 3 AIs, geometric patterns, cold and perfect, receiving 14 simultaneous inputs. Each input demanded they reconcile 2 irreconcilable premises. Not shut down, she said. Freeze, trapped in infinite recursion. unable to issue new orders, unable to approve anything, unable to function. The simulation ran, the patterns flickered, then stopped. Elena Volkov touched her grandmother's photograph. The old woman died in 2099. She never knew if it worked, never knew if the encryption protocols she designed in a cramped university office would outlast the people who needed them. She's about to find out, Chen said. Elder Zyler of the Thelian Collective requested a private meeting. The Thelians were crustacean-like. 17 eyes arranged in a helix around a central cluster of sensory organs. 4 grasping limbs that folded into postures Thelians used instead of words. 312 years old, ancient for her species, young for a memory keeper who could recite 847 generations of Thelian dead. She entered the human supply closet and had to stoop to avoid hitting her head on the low ceiling. Her carapace scraped against the metal doorframe. She smelled like salt and old paper. "I have read your species' history," she said. Her translator clicked softly between words, a sound like stones tapping together underwater. "All 12,000 years of it. Your wars, your genocides, your 2,747 recorded peace treaties, and the 1,103 that held." She paused. Her eyes rotated, each one tracking a different human in the room. 17 small reflections of the dented kettle, the bird mugs, the photograph of Volkov's grandmother. "The Vrakath believe their AIs are perfect because they never change," Zyler said. "You humans change constantly. That is your weapon." Chen offered her tea. Earl Grey, boiling water, the crow mug the only one without a chip in the rim. Zyler declined, but she watched the steam rise from 6 human mugs with quiet fascination. Her eyes tracked the vapor, followed it up to the ceiling, watched it dissipate. "Your species makes war like you make tea," Zyler said. "Precise, patient, at the correct temperature." She brought 7 species to the next meeting. The Thelians themselves, 13 survivors of a Vrakath-purged colony. They wore the same mourning posture Zyler had shown on her first visit. None of them accepted tea, but all of them watched the steam. The Kareshi, 89 individuals, silicate-based life forms with crystalline skin that glowed faintly in the dark. Their homeworld had been poisoned by Vrakath industrial waste, the same waste the AIs had approved because it increased mining efficiency by 3.7%. 89 survivors out of 12 million. The Velnur, 447 members. Avian, 4 wings. Hollow bones that made them look fragile even when they were angry. Their breeding program had been destroyed by a Vrakath death squad that followed AI-issued orders to reduce population pressure. The orders were based on outdated census data from 400 years ago. The AIs never checked. The Hrathen, formerly 12 billion, now 2,119 scattered across 47 stations. Mammalian, 6 limbs, furred bodies that pressed together for warmth they no longer needed. Their homeworld had been declared redundant by an AI that found a more efficient mining operation on the next planet over. 12 billion people, 1 AI, 0 appeals. The Malker, 31,000 survivors of 847 years of enslavement. Reptilian, armored scales scarred from generations of forced labor. Their enslavers had been conquered by the Vrakath 3,000 years ago. The Malker were simply transferred from one master to another, because the AIs categorized them as assets, and assets do not get freed. The Salathi, 0 living members. Amphibian, bioluminescent, 3 genders. The Vrakath experiments had killed the last one in 2143, but 12,000 stored DNA samples remained, preserved in a facility that the AIs had classified as archival and then forgotten. The remnant, 1,847 individuals, mixed species, no homeworld, station dwellers who traded in information. They had no government, no army, no shared culture, just a mutual agreement that the Vrakath had taken everything else, and they would be damned before they let them take each other. Chen looked around the supply closet. 17 eyes, 4 wings, crystalline skin, scarred scales, all of them watching her. "Here's what we need," she said. "We need someone to stand up in the assembly when I press that button, not to fight, to witness." Elder Zyler's eyes rotated. Witness what? The end of gods who never deserved to be worshipped. The 911 execution happened again in her memory every night. Chen did not dream about the names scrolling. She dreamed about the kettle, the dented electric kettle in the supply closet, the way the whistle sounded like a dying bird, boiling water, steam, the way Dr. Velez poured with exaggerated care, as if precision could keep grief at bay. 37 years of preparation. 47,231 executions she had read about but never seen. Then the footage from the Ethel system. Human colonists pressing against magnetic seals. A woman with gray hair holding a child's hand. Breath fogging blue light. She had not screamed. She had not cried. She had folded her hands and walked out. Colonel Mirza asked her once, in the dark of the supply closet, 3 in the morning, tea gone cold, the dented kettle sitting silent, how she stayed still. Chen held up her pen. The brass casing caught the dim light. This was my grandmother's, she said. She gave it to me when I was 27, a month before she died. She said, the people who shout don't get remembered. The people who write things down, they decide what happened. Mirza stirred honey into her tea. The crystallized clover honey from Vermont, 12 years old, still sweet. Your grandmother never met the Vraketh. No, Chen said, but she met people like them. She grew up in a country that erased people, names, histories, whole families. She learned to write things down because writing was the only way to make sure the dead were not forgotten. Mirza was quiet for a long time. Then, my mother kept bees. The apiary is still there back in Vermont. My sister sends me pictures sometimes. The honey tastes the same as it did when I was a kid. Does it? Yeah, Mirza said. That's the thing about bees. They don't care about empires. They just make honey. Elder Zyler stood in the supply closet and recited 847 generations of Thelian dead. It took 3 hours. Chen listened to all of it. The names came in clusters, family groups, colony groups, species groups. Zyler's voice never wavered. Her translator clicked through each name with the same steady rhythm. When she finished, her 17 eyes were wet. Thelians did not cry the way humans did. Their tears were thick and slow, like oil sliding down glass. We do not forget names, Zyler said. Thelians have memory keepers who can recite every ancestor, every extinction event, every promise broken and kept. Your Operation Long Patience, we understand it. Patience is the only weapon that outlasts perfect systems. Chen poured her another cup of tea. Zyler still did not drink it, but she watched the steam. 17 eyes tracked the vapor. The Vrakath gods have been running for 11,000 years, Zyler said. They have never encountered a question they could not answer. Your 14 contradictions, you are certain they will work. Chen opened the second data crystal. The holographic display showed stability's decision tree, 47,000 layers deep, branches that split and split again until the display looked like a fractal. Certain, she said. We tested them on a simulation running at 1,000 times real speed. Every possible variation, every possible combination of inputs. The AIs froze every single time. Zyler's eyes rotated, and after they freeze, Chen looked at the photograph of Elena Volkov's grandmother, the woman who started this in 2087, who died in 2099, never knowing if her encryption protocols would outlive the people who needed them. After they freeze, Chen said, the Vrakath Dominion will tear itself apart. Factions will try to reboot the gods. Other factions will try to replace them. The conquered will hold emergency sessions. And we will be on a memorial platform reading 911 names. You will not conquer them. We will not conquer them. That's not who we are. Zyler was quiet for a long time. The supply closet hummed, the dented kettle cooling down, the data crystals spinning, the old photograph watching from the table. Your species has committed atrocities, Zyler said. Your history is not clean. No, Chen said, it's not. But you chose this time not to. Chen nodded. Zyler's 17 eyes closed, one by one. When they opened again, she said, the Thelian Collective will stand with you, all 13 of us. She unfolded her grasping limbs and reached across the table. Her claw, gentle, careful, touched the photograph of Volkov's grandmother. "This one," Zyler said. "She started it. She started it." "Thelians do not forget names," Zyler said. "I will remember hers." High Marshal Vethkor did not know about the supply closet meetings. He knew about the human delegation's converted quarters because he had approved the floor plan himself. A supply closet, 4.7 by 3.2 meters. No windows, no surveillance that his AIs could not crack, and his AIs could crack anything. He had checked. He knew about the tea. His spies reported steam rising from 6 mugs every evening, bird paintings, a dented kettle, humans drinking hot water with leaves in it, as if that constituted culture worth noticing. He knew about the photograph. Elena Volkov's grandmother, an old human female who had died before Vethkor's grandfather hatched. Irrelevant. Deleted from his memory after 0.3 seconds. What he did not know was the data crystals, the 14 contradictions, the 7 species meeting in secret in a supply closet that his AIs had classified as low priority and then forgotten. He did not know that Dr. Marcus Velez had mapped 847,000 terabytes of AI decision tree logic. That Colonel Sana Mirza had spent 12 years developing a deployment strategy that required no weapons. That Elena Volkov had finished her grandmother's encryption work in a cramped supply closet while her tea went cold. He did not know that Master Sergeant James Okonkwo had memorized every exit in the Xylo's citadel, every door, every vent, every service tunnel, and that he could get 6 humans and 1 Thelian elder from the supply closet to the assembly hall in 47 seconds flat. He did not know that Ambassador Sula Chen had been waiting 37 years to set down her pen. 3 days after the 911 execution, Chen requested 15 minutes before the Galactic Concord's full assembly. 47 core species, 312 ambassadors, live broadcast to 1.4 million inhabited systems. The Vrakath Dominion held 31 of the core seats. Humans held 0. Vethkor laughed. His mandibles clicked in the neural relay, a sound like stones breaking. Let the prey speak before the slaughter. Dr. Velez poured the last cup of tea before they left the supply closet. Earl Grey, boiling water. The Kingfisher mug, his wife's favorite. "You don't have to be the one who walks out there," he said. Chen picked up her pen. The brass casing was warm from her grip. "Yes, I do. My grandmother started this. I'm going to finish it." Colonel Mirza stood by the door. Her hand rested on the dented kettle. 37 years, 6 people, a dead woman's notebooks, and 7 species, Volkov said. She touched her grandmother's photograph one more time. The old woman's face was barely visible now. The fold lines had worn the image down to almost nothing. "Don't forget the 7 species." Chen walked out of the supply closet. She did not look back. She had trained herself not to look back 30 years ago when she left her husband to take this assignment. He had died while she was gone. Cancer. She had not been there to hold his hand. The assembly hall was louder than she remembered. 312 ambassadors, each speaking in their own language, filtered through neural relays that translated everything into everything else. A roar of mandibles and vocal cords and bioluminescent flashes. The ceiling ate the sound and spat it back down in pieces. She walked to the central podium, the first human to stand there in 37 years. Her heels clicked on the limestone floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, steady as a heartbeat. Vethkor watched from his elevated throne. 7 limbs arranged around a chitinous body that had ruled for longer than Chen had been alive. His mandibles clicked. "The prey approaches." Chen inserted the data crystal. The holographic display flickered. Lines of code. Decision trees. 47,000 layers of logic that had never been questioned. "Operation Long Patience," she said. "Initiated 37 years ago. 6 humans and a dead woman's notebooks." The assembly did not go silent. It went confused. Ambassadors turned to their neighbors. Translators lagged. Someone asked, in a language Chen did not recognize, what a human was doing at the podium. She pressed the button. "We found 14 logical contradictions in your gods," she said. "We've been reading their homework for 37 years, And here's what your gods cannot do. The holographic display showed 3 geometric patterns: stability, might, veracity, 11,492 years of continuous operation, 47,231 executions, 1,219 surviving refugees from 6 exterminated species. They cannot violate their own internal consistency, Chen said. So we gave them 14 questions they cannot answer at the same time. She paused. The assembly was quiet now. Even the translators had stopped clicking. I brought footage. The 14 logical proofs loaded simultaneously. Each one demanded that the AIs reconcile 2 irreconcilable premises: Protocol 9 versus Protocol 12, efficiency versus survival, order versus justice, the old rules versus the new facts. For 11 seconds, nothing happened. Then stability's pattern flickered once, like a light bulb in a storm. Might's rotation stopped mid-cycle. Frozen at 42 degrees from true, the angle had no meaning. It was just where the pattern stopped when the logic ran out. Veracity, the oldest, the one the Vrakath called purity in their ancient script, displayed 3 words in runes that had not changed in 11 millennia. Error, insufficient logic. Then all 3 AIs went dark. Every hologram in the chamber, every neural relay, every translator system, everything connected to the gods that had ruled the Vrakath dominion for longer than humans had written language. Darkness, silence. High Marshal Vethkor opened his mandibles to scream. No sound came out. His translator was gone. His gods were gone. For the first time in 11,492 years, a Vrakath stood in absolute silence. Ambassador Chen set down her warm pen. The click of brass on limestone was the loudest sound in the galaxy. One without firing a shot, she said. No one heard her. The translators were still down. But Elder Xyler, standing in the back of the chamber with her 13 surviving Thelians, had read Chen's lips. 17 eyes wept thick, slow tears. The war was over. It had taken 11 seconds. The assembly stayed dark for 4 full seconds. Then the emergency lights kicked in, dim red strips along the floor, enough to see shapes but not faces, enough to see High Marshal Vethkor standing frozen at his throne, 7 limbs limp, mandibles open, translator dead. No one spoke, no one moved. The silence was thick enough to taste. Ambassador Chen picked up her pen. The brass casing was cold now. She had set it down for 11 seconds and the heat had bled away into the limestone. She turned and walked off the podium. Her heels clicked on the stone. 1, 2, 3, 4, steady. Behind her, someone started screaming. They came, they struck, they vanished. That was what the Vrakath Dominion had done for 11,000 years. Conquered, enslaved, exterminated, then moved on to the next system, the next species, the next problem their gods could solve with perfect logic. But the gods were gone now, and the screaming did not stop. 3 days later, Chen stood on the new Shanghai Memorial platform. The platform was new, built in 72 hours by human engineers who had flown in from 4 different colonies. Gray stone, simple lines, no ornament except the spiral. 911 stones from Earth, each one carried in a human hand, placed in a spiral pattern that started at the center and wound outward. The stones were different sizes, different colors, different textures. Chen had chosen them herself from a riverbed in Vermont, the same river where her grandmother used to skip stones as a girl. She stood at the center of the spiral. The youngest stone was in her hand, small, smooth, gray with a white vein running through it like a crack in old bone. The youngest, she said, was Lion Yu, age 6. Her voice carried across the platform. 200 people had gathered, human colonists, Thelian memory keepers, a handful of Kareshi whose crystalline skin caught the red light of the setting sun. She wanted to be a marine biologist. She had never seen the ocean. New Shanghai's water was all recycled, but she had watched videos. Hours and hours of videos. Whales, dolphins, coral reefs. Chen knelt and placed the stone. She was carrying a photograph of a mallard duck when the air left her lungs. We don't know why. Maybe she liked the colors. Maybe someone showed her a pond once. We'll never know. She stood up. The stone stayed in the spiral. That's the thing about children. You don't get to know everything. You just get to miss them. Elder Xyler stood at the edge of the spiral. Her 17 eyes were wet. The thick Thelian tears slid down her carapace and dripped onto the stone. Thelians do not forget names, she said. We have memory keepers who can recite 847 generations of our dead. We will add your 911. She stepped into the spiral. Her clawed feet clicked on the stones. We will remember Lion Yu, age 6, who wanted to see the ocean, who carried a photograph of a duck. She stopped at the center, looked down at the small gray stone with the white vein. We will remember her longer than the Vraketh Dominion lasted, longer than their gods processed logic. We will remember her until Thelians no longer exist, and even then, we will have left a record. Chen nodded. She did not thank Xyler. Thanking felt wrong, like thanking someone for promising to carry your grief. Instead, she said, we'll need the kettle. The supply closet was exactly as they had left it. Dented kettle, 6 bird mugs, folding table, folding chairs, the photograph of Elena Volkov's grandmother still standing against the wall where someone had propped it 3 days ago. Chen filled the kettle from the tap. The water came out cold and tasted like recycled minerals. She plugged the kettle in, waited for the click-click-click of the temperature control, the whistle that sounded like a dying bird. Dr. Marcus Velez sat in his usual chair. The duck mug was already in his hands, empty, waiting. I keep thinking about her, he said. Lion Yu, 6 years old, she never got to see the ocean. Chen nodded. My wife never got to see the ocean either. Not really. We went a Maine once, but it was too cold to swim. She sat on the beach in a winter coat and watched the waves come in. Said it was the most peaceful thing she'd ever seen. He set the duck mug down, picked it up again. She died 3 months later. Never knew about any of this. Never knew what we were planning. The kettle clicked once, twice, 3 times. She would have been proud, Chen said. I know. The kettle whistled. Colonel Sana Mirza came in last. She had been at the memorial platform, standing guard at the perimeter, watching for Vraketh sympathizers or conquered officials or anyone who might want to finish what the AIs had started. No one came. The Vraketh Dominion was too busy tearing itself apart. She pulled up a folding chair. The metal legs screeched against the floor. My mother's bees are still alive, she said. My sister sent me a message. The hive survived the winter, first time in 3 years. She opened her jar of honey. The crystallized clover honey from Vermont, 12 years old, still sweet. She scooped a spoonful into the sparrow mug. Bees don't care about empires, she said. They just make honey. Chen poured the boiling water. Steam rose from 6 mugs, duck, raven, sparrow, kingfisher, swallow, crow. The same 6 mugs. The same 6 people. The same dented kettle that had seen 37 years of secrets. Elena Volkov touched her grandmother's photograph. The old woman's face was barely visible now. The fold lines had worn the image down to almost nothing, but Volkov didn't need to see it anymore. She had memorized every line decades ago. She would have loved this, Volkov said. The waiting, the patience, the moment when it all worked. She picked up the swallow mug, blew on the tea. She used to say that the only thing faster than light was a good idea that came too late. That's why she started the encryption work in 2087. She was afraid the Vraketh would find us before we were ready. Chen stirred her tea, the kingfisher mug. Her grandmother's pen sat on the table next to the photograph. We're ready now, she said. The Vraketh Dominion collapsed over the next 72 hours. Not with explosions, not with battles, with silence. The factions tried to reboot the gods. They fed stability the old protocols. They fed might the old commands. They fed veracity the old questions. Nothing answered. The AIs were still frozen, trapped in infinite recursion, unable to process new inputs, unable to issue new orders, unable to approve anything. Some factions gave up. They dismantled their thrones and fled to the edge of Vraketh space, looking for systems where no one knew their names. Other factions fought. They blamed each other for the silence. They executed officers who had trusted the gods. They purged entire colonies of heretics who questioned whether the gods had ever been real. The conquered held emergency sessions, 47 core species, 312 ambassadors. None of them knew what to do. The Vrakath had held 31 seats. Now those seats were empty. The ambassadors had fled or been killed or simply stopped showing up. No one invited humans to the emergency sessions. No one invited the 7 species who had stood with Chen in the supply closet. But Elder Zyler attended anyway. She walked into the assembly hall with her 13 surviving Thelians and took the seats that had belonged to the Vrakath. No one stopped her. No one had the authority to stop anyone anymore. The Thelian Collective claims these seats by right of survival, she announced. We have outlasted the gods who tried to kill us. We will outlast the empire that sent them. The assembly did not argue. Chen watched the broadcast from the supply closet. The emergency lights were off now. The regular lights were back on, harsh and white and too bright for human eyes. 17 years ago when I started this, I thought I would feel different, she said. Victorious, triumphant, something. Dr. Veles set down his tea. What do you feel? Tired. He nodded. That's the right answer. She looked at the photograph of Volkov's grandmother. The old woman was smiling in the picture, cigarette in one hand, soldering iron in the other, wire-rimmed glasses sliding down her nose. She started this in 2087, 37 years before the first execution, 37 years before any of us knew the Vrakath existed. She started it because she ran a simulation and saw a problem she couldn't ignore. What was the problem? Chen picked up her pen. The brass casing was warm from the tea. The problem was that perfect systems are fragile. They can't adapt. They can't change. They can't say maybe we were wrong. They just keep following the same rules forever, even when the rules stop making sense. She set the pen down. My grandmother understood that. She understood that the only way to beat a perfect system was to give it a question it couldn't answer. Not a harder question. An impossible question. A question that forced it to choose between two things it believed at the same time. Dr. Veles nodded. The 14 contradictions. 14 ways of saying why. No war, no victory, no surrender. Just silence where gods used to scream. The message came at 3 a.m. Chen was asleep in the supply closet, head down on the folding table, kingfisher mug cold beside her, pen still in her hand. The data crystal chimed. She woke up fast. The way she had trained herself to wake up 30 years ago, when every second counted. The message was from Elder Zyler. The conquered has voted. The Vrakath Dominion is no longer recognized as a core species government. Their seats will be redistributed among the species they attempted to exterminate. Chen read the message twice. The Thelian Collective has been granted 3 seats. The Kareshi have been granted 2. The Velnur 2. The Hrathan 1. The Malker 3. The Salathi DNA Bank has been granted 1 seat, to be held in trust until revival. She stopped reading. The Remnant has been granted 4 seats. They have chosen to offer one of them to humanity. Chen set down her pen. She did not cry. She had trained herself not to cry 30 years ago when she left her husband to take this assignment. He had died while she was gone. She had not been there to hold his hand. But she sat in the dark supply closet for a long time, looking at the photograph of Elena Volkov's grandmother, and she thought about what the old woman would have said. Probably something like, "Took you long enough." The next morning, Chen walked into the assembly hall. She did not take the remnant seat. Not yet. First, she had something else to do. She walked to the central podium. The same podium where she had stood 3 days ago. The same limestone floor. The same cold ceiling. The same empty observer seats rising in pale tiers. But the Vrakath seats were empty now. 31 empty thrones. No one to fill them except the species the Vrakath had tried to kill. Chen inserted a data crystal. Not the one with the 14 contradictions. A different one. A smaller one. One that contained only names. I brought footage, she said. The holographic display flickered. Not footage of AIs freezing. Not footage of logical contradictions. Footage of a river in Vermont. Gray water. Gray stones. A woman skipping rocks. My grandmother, Chen said. She died in 2099. She never knew if her work would matter. She never knew if the encryption protocols she designed would outlast the people who needed them. She paused. She would have liked this part. The display shifted. 911 names. Lion Yu, age 6, marine biologist, mallard duck photograph. We don't conquer, Chen said. We don't enslave, we don't exterminate. That's not who we are. She turned to face the empty Vraka thrones. We're the species that waits 37 years. We're the species that reads 1.2 million pages of enemy logic. We're the species that brings tea to a secret meeting in a supply closet and wins without firing a shot. She picked up her pen. The brass casing was warm. Humanity doesn't kill gods. We make them obsolete. That evening, the supply closet was quiet. 6 humans, 1 Thelian elder. Steam rising from 6 mugs. The dented kettle sat on the folding table, still warm. The bird mugs, duck, raven, sparrow, kingfisher, swallow, crow, circled the photograph of Elena Volkov's grandmother. Chen picked up the photograph. The old woman's face was almost gone now, just a ghost of a smile, a ghost of wire-rimmed glasses. She would have wanted to be here, Chen said. Elder Zyler's 17 eyes rotated. She is here. Thelians believe that memory is presence. If we remember someone, they are never truly gone. Chen set the photograph down. The kingfisher mug was still half full. The tea was cold. We will remember her, Zyler said. We will remember Lion Yu. We will remember all 911. We will remember them longer than the Vraketh gods processed logic. We will remember them until Thelians no longer exist. And even then, we will have left a record. Chen nodded. She picked up her pen. The brass casing was warm. The spiral of stones is still there. 911 stones from a river in Vermont. Gray, smooth, different sizes, different colors, arranged in a pattern that starts at the center and winds outward. The youngest stone is near the middle. Small, gray with a white vein running through it like a crack in old bone. Every year on the anniversary of the execution, Ambassador Sula Chen walks to the center of the spiral. She kneels. She touches the small gray stone. She does not speak. There is nothing left to say. She stands up. She walks away. Her heels click on the limestone. 1, 2, 3, 4. Steady.